Well, first of all, that woman who refused to go to these classes, which, I mean, her friend was inviting her, presumed that the role of the therapist was to shoehorn the couple back into their marriage in some way at any cost.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the famous joke by Groucho Marx. He said, marriage is a great institution, but who wants to be institutionalized, right? Well, it is a great institution. I happen to value it. However, I don't automatically applaud when I see somebody who's been married for 50 years because I don't know what's happened to their soul inside. Has it grown? Has it developed? Was that relationship a container, a platform whereby both parties grew more nearly into their potential? Or was it sort of contracted at a certain point in their development, which they may have left behind long ago? But for all sorts of reasons, rationalizations, fears, they stay locked in that. So you can't say outside whether a relationship is healthy for a person or not. You need to know what's happening to them inside.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, I wrote a book called The Eden Project, and it was referencing the fact that there is always in each of us a very deep, archaic desire to just meld into the other. That's what feeds the whole world of romance, after all. It's very compelling and very seductive. And in some way, that's like the child wanting to be brought back into the embrace of the nurturant parent. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but when it prevails, it will produce a regressive relationship, a relationship of dependency. And again, not as one that, supports the growth and development of each party. The same is true of jobs and so forth and friendships.
Yeah.
If what you're doing, I mean, this is pretty simple when you stop and pull back and look at it. If what you're doing is helping you grow and develop, then terrific. And you can tell the difference. And if it isn't, you better reconsider a few things. Now, if I said to you, I'm seeing this couple, do you think they should stay together or not? You'd say, well, I can't tell you. There's so many variables. Of course there are. In one case, the individuals need to work something through. That's how a relationship really does grow and get strengthened. In other cases, it was based on the wrong premises in the first place. Because it's certainly true that one is not the same person at 40 that one was at 20 or 25. Now, it doesn't mean that the relationship can't grow and evolve with those people. It often can and does, but sometimes it doesn't. So in the Eden Project, I talk about how all relationships begin in projection. Now, by definition, projection is something intrapsychic to me. You say something, I see something, it triggers my psychological history. And that energy is sufficient to leave me and go out into the world to fall upon you, upon an institution, upon a career, upon the other out there. Now, I don't know I've done that. It's unconscious. So I start relating to the other, not as they are, but as my projection allows me to see them. It becomes the lens through which I see them. The second stage is that because the other is other, sooner or later they start wearing away some of the expectations of the projection. That's cognitive dissonance, it's called. Why don't you line up with the way I'm expecting you to be? And again, this can be careers, friendships, institutions, but also intimate relationship. Thirdly, sooner or later, the otherness of the other will wear through that and cause sufficient disturbance that I will get caught in the power conflict. Well, let me line you up again. What's wrong with you? You've changed. It's your fault, not my projection. I don't know that's happened. You're letting me down. You're disappointing me. How can I maneuver you back into control? By overt controlling behaviors, passive aggressive behaviors, withdrawal, whatever. Fourth, sooner or later, the erosion of the projection, it falls back into the unconscious. And if it stops there, and it does on most occasions, one says, boy, you're not what I thought you were, right? You let me down. What did you do? What did you fail to do? And you see, and we just go on and repeat the same dynamics with the next opportunity. The fifth stage, if it's going to occur, is, of course, that I make it conscious. I put that on you. What was I expecting of you? What was I asking of you? You see, then I realize that energy that I put out on the other has come back to me. What am I going to do with that? Now, let me give you a very concrete example. One of the most common, is a cliche even, is the empty nest syndrome. When the last child leaves, the person, the parent who's been very involved in them often sees a part of their own soul drive away, so to speak. That happened to me when my last child came through town, and by the way, headed off to a strange place called Texas, and she lives in Dallas to this day. And I remember feeling that sense of loss and emptiness. And I said to myself, it's an old therapist trick, but you can try it at home. What would you say to one of your clients who said this same thing to you? And I knew immediately. I said, look, the energy that you've invested in that person was well spent. There she goes. Terrific. What if she weren't going? What if she was afraid to go into life because she'd picked up on fears? She's doing her journey. That's what she's supposed to do. Now, that energy's come back to you. What are you going to do with it? Yeah. So after a 20-year hiatus, having written early because academia demanded, I hadn't written anything for 2 decades. So she's driving across the country in her little Honda. I started writing the middle passage about what we're talking about today, which was the first of another 17 books. And it's like that energy's come back. So there are different children, metaphorically, to be created here. So you have to realize when a projection fails, we usually want to blame the other. But we never really need to say, well, that's what do I need to learn about myself there? And in the Eden Project, I mentioned that there is an heroic question in every relationship that we need to address. And this question is, what am I asking of the other that I really ought to be looking at myself? Now, for example, if I'm expecting my partner to be the source of my sense of self, then that's something I'm not taking care of. That's not her business. It's my business. Now, I think it would be wrong to live with a person who continuously denigrates you, right, or ignores you, but I can't dump on the other, my unfinished business. That's my job, not hers. It's actually a loving thing to ask this question. What am I asking of the other that I'm not addressing myself? When I address that, then I begin to take that back, and it lifts it off of my partner's shoulders. And that's one reason why I've, in another book recently, there's on living the examined life, there's a chapter there that caused an awful lot of people out there have to stick in the craw of their throat. And that was the chapter on the necessity of freeing your children from you. Yeah. Because everyone wants to think I'm a good parent. May not perfect, but I'm good, well-intended. It's well, maybe that's true and great for you. But it's natural to have expectations on our children, to burden them with our unlived life. Jung said the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent, because that's where the child is either going to be stuck or they're going to be spending their life getting unstuck, or not being aware of the conflict. They'll be living a kind of failing treatment plan out there, such as a life of distraction or a life of addiction or whatever. So when we look at that, then you realize the best thing I can do for my child, in addition to providing them love and affirmation and food on the table and clothing and shelter, is to live my journey, because that gives them the permission to live theirs. Once my son drove, when he finished college, he drove from Florida to Santa Fe, which he'd visited once before, fallen in love with it, and he drove across the country, and I congratulated him for doing that. And he said, well, this is literally what he said. I was allowed to live my journey because I saw you live yours. And I thought, well, some of the guilt I had for having my family in a foreign country, which was also a great experience for them, was just satisfied at that point because he got the message. You're here to live the journey, not stay close to shore and please your parents.